Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you've had a good week and a good weekend thus far. It's been a busy one here. Lots of family stuff going on, which is good. Good family things, not bad family things, which is also great. So, I've had a couple of questions come through throughout the course of this evening on Facebook and through Messenger. So we'll cover those first to start with, and then we'll get into your questions over on the chat. So be thinking about questions that you might have and start getting them in the chat, and I will make my way through them. But I also had something that I wanted to show you as well. So I'm not just going to deal with your questions right off the bat, but I am going to show you something as well, which I thought was pretty cool and worth checking out, because I think what I'm going to show you is free, so I think you ought to go and get it, to be honest. And even if it's not free, the company that I got this particular plugin from is terrific, and their plugins are extremely reasonably priced, so you should pick it up for super cheap, if not for free. So definitely I recommend that you go and get it, and I'll show it to you in just a wee minute. But first of all, the important thing, which is who is here and who is first in the door. And the person that was first in the door by a country mile is Thomas over in the Philippines, who says good morning. Hang on just a second. Let me just get myself a little bit more comfortable in my chair. And Just Bob was second in the door, one of my moderators, who said that he is going to visit his mum for the first time in the whole pandemic so far. So he has the opportunity to go and do that. And we are a family-friendly, family-first kind of place here. So I think that's more important than sitting listening to me wittering on. Definitely recommend family first. And we have a new guy here as well. That is Marcos. Marcos Gomez is here. And I think he had a question as well, but we'll get to that. Who was next? My good friend, Photography, Light and Magic. He says, how you doing? I think Glasgow is heading for a full lockdown again. Yes, I think you might well be. And I think Edinburgh will not be far behind you. And I'm hoping that that this time around it'll be a wee bit shorter lockdown. I cannot get comfortable in my chair tonight. I don't know why. But yeah, I'm hoping that it'll be a little bit more of a shorter lockdown this time round, because I think I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a virologist or an epidemiologist. I'm definitely not an expert. However, from doing a lot of reading, because I love to read and I have a very, very inquisitive mind about a great many different subjects, and one of the things I did was I looked back at some of the history of the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. And it seems that the first wave was pretty horrific and killed a lot of people. And then there was a second wave, which was a lot more infectious than the first wave. And the first wave was incredibly infectious to start with. Second wave was even more infectious, so a lot more people got it, but it was less deadly. The death rate from the second wave was less intense than the first wave. And it took maybe a good 4, maybe 5 years before the pandemic, the Spanish flu had become benign. It's still around, even to this day, over 100 years later. It still does its rounds around the globe, and it is recognized as Spanish flu. But here's the thing. It doesn't really kill anybody, and hasn't done for a long time. but it still goes around, and people get, it's kind of like having a really, the kind of flu that just floors you. And so essentially that's what the Spanish flu is. It's just a flu that just totally knocks you backwards and sideways. So likely a lot of you folks may well have at some point in your life had Spanish flu and just never known it. Because these days it just doesn't really do anything to anybody. So yeah. So I think and that, by the way, was a coronavirus. Spanish flu was a coronavirus. And so it is entirely plausible that this particular coronavirus, COVID-19, will follow suit. And, the second wave will be very, very infectious, maybe not quite as deadly as the first. And hopefully over a passage of several months, maybe 12 months, it will eventually mutate to such a point that it gradually becomes weaker and weaker and more benign. And eventually it will just pass into just like a regular kind of flu type thing that just goes around the globe relatively regularly. So yeah, hopefully that is what will become of that. But anyway, this is not the Jonny Lipsham pandemic virology show. But still, I kind of wanted to get that out there because, I have been reading about it and thought it was quite interesting. Let's see. Tony is here, and I know Tony has a question because he messaged me on Facebook before the show started, so I am going to answer his question very, very shortly. So, Tony, do not go anywhere. But I'm glad you're here. John Lake is here. Bob Studios is here. DJ Vivaldi is here. Hello to you. I think you're new to my show, so I am glad you're here. And you're saying jazz swing is great. Yeah, that's kind of more bebop that I played at the start. That is a piece of mine that I wrote probably about 28 years ago, nearly 30 years ago. And hang on just a second. Remind me later. Yeah, it was a piece that I wrote like nearly 30 years ago when I was at university. And one of the tasks we had to do was write kind of this bebop piece loosely based around the chord changes to I Got Rhythm, which is what that kind of is. It follows those kind of chord changes. And yeah, so that's kind of like an extract from that piece. And it's about a minute long, so I thought, yeah, perfect. Jazz is live, says Marcos. Yeah, I quite agree. Let's see. Tim Talks Audio is here. He says, hello, friends. Hello to you, Tim, my dear friend. I hope you're doing well, mate. And Mika Han is here as well. And who else are we missing? Wait, the chat just jumped massively. We have some notable absences now, which is cool. There are some people who are not able to make it, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. Mika says there were American anti-mask leagues during the 1918 pandemic. Yep, I'm pretty sure there were. It's called H1N1 now. Yep, nothing to do with Spain. Yes, and I don't think it was necessarily ever originally to do with Spain. I think that's just kind of where it was picked up. And that's just kind of the name that just kind of stuck to it. But yeah, H1N1. And occasionally it comes back around with a bit more kick to it, like I think it did a few years back. But never really, it wasn't incredibly deadly like it had been back in 1918. Let's see. Just think how bad COVID would have been back then. Yeah, absolutely. And especially as we didn't really understand virology and epidemiology like we do now. So, which is, we are very blessed, I think. All right. And Carl is here. Carl Henderson says, just joined in from the Caribbean. Oh, the Caribbean. I love the Caribbean. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. Wonderful islands, wonderful people. I don't think I've met anybody who personally, my personal experience, don't think I've ever met anybody unpleasant from the Caribbean. Not to say that there aren't unpleasant people around there, but I personally have never met anybody that is unpleasant from the Caribbean, which is cool. So welcome to you, Carl, and I'm glad you're here. And Tim, I'm just going to do something here for you. There you go. Tim, I've just made you a moderator, mate. Because I'm a moderator short right now, so I could use an extra pair of hands, and I have just awarded you that responsibility. So just pop out of this live stream and pop back in, and you should see your nice little wrench, and then you can have fun with that. All right, so enough talk about coronaviruses and pandemics and virology and stuff that I'm not an expert in. And really, I'm not even phenomenally an expert in the subject I am an expert in. I still have a lot to learn. I think everybody does. And that's kind of why we're here, really, is all about learning together. So, all right, let me get to the first thing. And that's the thing that I wanted to show you first. Hang on, I have an itch I must scratch. There we go. So I'm going to show you this plugin that I acquired, which is very, very cool. And some of you may already know what this is, and some of you may already be familiar with it. And if you are, that's great. You can kind of go and make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something and tune out for maybe just a wee minute. But if you're not familiar with this, this is great, and I heartily recommend it. And what we're talking about is this guy here. This particular plugin is gorgeous from Clang Helm. It is the DC1A version 3, and it's awesome. It's an absolutely awesome plugin, and excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Hang on. Or at least I feel like I am. And nobody wants that. Okay. We might be okay. We might be okay. I don't think I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to try and hold it off. Anyway, this is a great little plugin. It's a compressor that has 2 knobs and a few buttons down the bottom here, and that's all it has. But don't be fooled by what you see, because what you see is definitely not what you get. You get more than you bargained for. Let me tell you that much. It sounds absolutely epic, this guy does. I'm so impressed with it. So let me just mute that channel just for a minute. And I'm going to mute that channel as well. And because basically I have this working in parallel. And I'm going to explain all of that in just a minute. And I've also set this up so I can do Tony's question as well. So this is a great compressor, and I have it on these drums right here. So let's just bypass it for a minute, and we'll listen to this terrific little drum loop. It's a nice little funky pattern performed by session legend Tom Brecklin from the Tom Brecklin drums, which is available from shop.presonus.com. If you haven't got it, or if you are a member of Presonus it is in your account already. Go ahead and download it and grab these drum loops. They are epic, and Tom's drums sound fantastic. And they were recorded at Presonus headquarters. Wait, I forgot to turn my notifications off. Let me just do that real quick. I forget to do that more regularly than I like to think that I do. So there we go. Okay, so that should not happen again. All right, here we go. It's just an awesome little compressor, and it makes these drums sound really, really great. That snare drum has a little bit more punch to it. Those hi-hats just come through the subtleties of the little paradiddle he's playing between the snare drum and the hi-hat come through really nicely with this compressor. Suddenly all those nuances that are being played there on the hi-hat just poke through really, really nicely, and it sounds fantastic. Now, the cool thing about this is it's got these buttons down the bottom, which give kind of different... They do different stuff under the hood. I still haven't quite worked out exactly what these do under the hood, but this negative button, I'm going to show you this in just a minute, because this works fantastic when you are using this as a parallel compressor. And I have this set up that way. Here, I'm just going to show you that right now. So if I get that one out of the way, and we unmute this one, now this is with our parallel drums in as well. If I bypass this, and there's just the parallel bus by itself. And you can see I'm absolutely slamming this, but this negative button just sounds awesome. Now, I just think that with this in parallel compression mode on this parallel bus here, with this slammed like it is, using this negative circuit here, the drums just really come alive in a fantastic way that just sounds really, really pleasing. Really, really liking this. And it's just dead easy to dial in. And you can get it, you know, absolutely slamming very, very quickly. And then you just tuck it in underneath. You know, you just dial it right down to 0 and then gradually bring it up until you can just hear it, or rather more feel it than hear it. And it just sounds great. And I do believe that this guy is free from clanghelm.com. So I highly recommend you go and get this guy. It's great on drums, but it's also great on bass. I've used it on bass guitar, and it sounds great. I'm going to experiment with some more different audio sources to kind of see what this works best with. But certainly as a parallel compressor, this sounds really, really great. So, you know, parallel compression isn't just something you do just on drums. You can do it on anything. I mean, for some stuff that I mix, I regularly use parallel compression on all sorts of different audio sources, including the lead vocal. I will parallel compress the lead vocal, and it just helps the vocal just really kind of sit nice and up front and give it some extra energy and some extra character. It can be really very, very, very helpful technique. The MJUC is awesome as well. I have that one. And I did a video series on the MJ, not a video series, I did like a 40-minute review of the MJUC. And it was only meant to be a 15-minute video, and it ended up being 45 minutes long because I was just so impressed with it. I just could not stop playing with the darn thing. So this guy is super impressive. Now, to Tony's question, Tony had a question about parallel compression using Presence XT and whether it can be done. And it certainly can, but here's the caveat. You cannot actually parallel compress or sidechain, I think is what you were talking about. You cannot sidechain compress the Presence XT instrument itself, but you can certainly use the sidechain feature of the compressor, or any, I think pretty much any compressor nowadays, any compressor native to Studio One. You can compress you can use it in sidechain mode on the channel itself rather than on the actual instrument. There's no actual sidechain key input on the presence instrument itself, but you can certainly sidechain it to any other source, which is what I have here set up for you. I've got a sidechain here for just the regular compressor. This presence instrument here, this is just a bass, and I've got a bass that I kind of just knocked in just 5 minutes before we started the show, and every time the kick drum hits, or it's pretty much ducking the bass just a little bit, so the kick drum has the percussive element of the bass, and then the bass rounds out that low end. And quite often, this is what I do, even in a jazz context, where you've just got the kick drum just feathered. You know, it's a little technique that we call feathering, where the drummer is basically just tapping the pedal of the kick drum, so the beater is just lightly touching, just giving a little very, very soft thud on, you know, every quarter note of the bar with the upright bass. And so quite often I would just give a little bit of sidechain compression for the upright bass. So the kick drum just taps down the upright bass just a little bit, and then the upright bass itself fills out the low end. But the kick drum takes the percussive effect of it. Sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes it doesn't work and doesn't sound that good, but quite oftentimes it does, and it sounds really, really cool. So yeah, it sounds great, and it's well worth doing, and it's dead easy to do. I do have a video on sidechain compression on my channel already, and certainly with version 4.5, when that was launched a little while back, about 18 months ago. This sidechain input filter was added to the compressor, and I think it was added to the channel strip as well. But now it's pretty much on everything, so you can even do this with the fat channel. So if you want to use the 1176 style compressor, or the LA2A style, or any of the other compressors that are in the fat channel, you can now do that. And it's dead easy to set up. The first thing you do is you bring your compressor into the channel that you want to compress. In this case, the bass. We want to compress the bass, and we want the drum track to be the trigger for it. So you set up the compressor on the bass, and then you click this little button here, and you just check off the name of the instrument that you want to use as the trigger. So in this case, alternative verse is the name of this drum loop that I'm using. And so I've just got that checked. And so now every time anything happens on this channel, it is compressing my bass guitar. And then you just dial it in. Now in this case, I don't want to do it too much. I don't want to create a pumping effect. That's not what I want to do with this particular style of music. I just want it to tap the bass down just a little bit. So this is what it now sounds like. Okay, let's take the compressor out. And back in. And out again. And back in. So you see how the kick drum, with the sidechain compressor set up on it, the kick drum is tapping the bass guitar down a little bit every time. But because the kick drum has that nice percussive punch and click to it, and you really hear the beater come through, then you get the actual bass guitar rounding out that sound. And the combination of the two just worked really, really great. And a lot of great records have been made using this particular technique. This is kind of nothing new here. This is a regularly used and well-oiled technique, but well worth employing whether you're using sidechain compression in an EDM context where you're using it to create a pumping effect, and that's a particularly great use of sidechain. And EDM folks will use a lot of sidechain compression on a lot of different sources to create different amounts of pumping effects that is perfect for their genre. Now here in this kind of funk context, you don't want to do too much of it. You want to do enough to kind of make sure that certain elements are not kind of competing with each other dynamically. It can be a useful way to kind of like keep things in check a little bit. So, definitely make use of this in a rock or a pop or a R&B or a funk kind of setting. Works very, very well. And as I say, you can use it in a jazz context as well. So, Tony, I hope that was a helpful answer to your question. Quite a long one. But there we go. So I'm going to take a few other questions just now. So let me pop over here and you guys can see me again. And I'm going to go back up a little bit to the chat whilst I was working away there. Let's see. Mika says, be careful of the power trip wielding the wrench can bring on. Yeah, absolutely. Tim says Clang Helm makes some really fun stuff. They absolutely do. The MJUC is one of the most fun compressors I think I have ever used, because it's not just one compressor, it's three compressors for the price of one. And as I say, I've got a video on my channel already that kind of tackles this, but I could certainly kind of give you a little bit of a quick look over it for sure. If I bring it back over onto my drums, you can see that. So if I go back over here, this is kind of what it looks like. And as I say, it's got three versions. If you buy the full fat thing, I mean, there is like a free version of this that you can get. I went and actually just bought this because I just thought this is just 24 euros, which is about $20 or so roughly. And I just thought this is just epic. And it is pretty simple to use. You got this timing thing here, which regulates the attack and release of the compressor. And then you've got a compression mode or a limiting mode. And then you just got like a knob that you dial up to compress, and then a makeup gain knob. But it does get more complicated if you want it to be. This is a nice little simple style one. And then you've got this one here. Gives you a little bit more control. So you've got attack and release knobs here this time. And then you've got ratio settings. You've got 2:1, 4:1, 8:1, and limiting. But you've also got these density and different stages of compression that you can engage as well. And then the third one gives you a high ratio option, which is great for kind of limiting or parallel compression. Density, and then this second stage, as I said before, then your attack and release, and then this time you get this punch thing, which kind of adds a little bit of extra attack onto your kind of attack settings that you've got already. This is very, very cool little feature. And I use this on drums quite a bit in a kind of more rock and roll kind of context. I would do that. It's got a calibration feature, so it's calibrated to -18. Then you've got automatic gain, and you've got high quality. And I don't know if there are some presets. Never seen this before, but yes, there are a whole bunch of presets. But you've also got this little tray at the bottom here, which gives you kind of like a timbre setting, so you can either have it dark or hi-fi, and you've got a drive here as well, and a sidechain filter, and a wet dry knob. which is very, very useful for parallel compression. If you want to do it this way, you certainly can. So yeah, so this is a fun guy. And as I say, there is a free version of this called the MJUC Junior, which basically features this one, and there's no tray. And it's just basically two knobs. I don't think you get the timing feature. I think you just get just the two knobs on the free one. But yeah, this is a great little guy, and as I say, this is a fantastic little compressor as well. And this one is free, and the MJUC is like only $25. It's just like a no-brainer to have it, really, to be honest. So there you go. That's the MJUC. Let's see. Marcos asks, what about parallel compression with proposital clipping and be leveling this parallel until it sounds substantial? Good idea. Digital clipping is not a good idea. Analog distortion is a completely different thing. Digital clipping just sounds nasty and metallic and just, yeah. You want to avoid digital clipping as much as possible. However, analog distortion, analog saturation is a good thing. And if you have a compressor that features that kind of saturation, like the MJUC has that drive knob, then yeah, you can certainly push the compressor a little bit harder than any other compressor that, that doesn't feature it. Because you definitely don't want to get into digital distortion, for sure. Let's see. Best remedy for coronavirus is good music. I'm not going to agree with you there. It would certainly help, but I don't think it's the solution. Let's see. Tim says negative control, alternative compression curve with negative ratios at more extreme input settings comes in handy when more aggressive, obvious pumping compression is desired. That's very cool, actually. Tim, thanks for that. DJ Vivaldi asks, why do you have Studio One version 4 and 5 on the taskbar? It's because I have Studio One 4 and Studio One 5 installed on my computer. In fact, you don't see it on my taskbar, but I have Studio One 3 and Studio One 2 on this computer as well. I work for PreSonus, and so that means I have to have all of the versions of Studio One that we currently support. Now, we no longer support Studio One version 2, but I still have it installed on my computer. I don't use it, but it's there. And since the launch of version 5, we stopped supporting Studio One version 2. So there it is. So if you guys are still running Studio One version 2, officially PreSonus no longer support it. So if you need help with it, or you think you found a bug or something like that, there's nothing we can do for you. We would recommend that you upgrade to Studio One 5. In actual fact, because you cannot purchase Studio One 3 or Studio One 4, either from our shop or from any of our authorized dealers anymore. So, yeah, that's what we would recommend in that situation. But yeah, we still support Studio One 4, and we will support that for a good long time to come. Technically, we don't support Studio One 3, but, there are some circumstances in which we'll help you out. But yeah, generally speaking, we don't support 3 anymore, but we do support 4 and 5. And so that's why I need Studio One 4 as well as Studio One 5 on my computer, because, there are people that they'll say, how do you do this? And I need to go back and reference that, or I need to take screenshots from Studio One 4 to give to the customer so they can do exactly what I do. So yeah, so that's why I have Studio One 4 on the taskbar. Bob Studio says, so the Clang Helm compressor is called Compressor. No, it's called, in this case, it's called the DC1A, and it's from the company called Clang Helm, and they are based in Germany. I know the guy who runs the company. His name is Tony. He is a fantastic bloke, and he is mostly a sole trader. He develops these plugins by himself. Clang Helm are a one-man operation for the most part. And basically he builds these compressors and EQs and all sorts of other things that he has on his website because he likes to use them. He's basically gone, if only we had a variable mu compressor that sounds really, really great. And so he goes, I'm going to build one. So he did. And then he made it available. And you can buy it. And there are all sorts of other stuff on there as well. Like there's the SDRR2, which is kind of like a saturator, which is very, very cool. I don't use it very often, but when I do, oh boy, it is so cool. Well, again, another plugin by him that is well worth getting. I like Clang Helm plugins. They do not sponsor me. This live stream is not brought to you by Clang Helm. It's brought to you by me. But I'm recommending Clang Helm to you guys because they are that good. And I don't recommend stuff that I don't like, to be honest. Let's see. What else do we have? Wait, chat jumped again. Hate it when that happens. I was looking for stuff close to what I think I hear. Yeah, absolutely. You can, if you really want to, acquire thousands of plugins. I don't agree with doing that. And the reason being, and it's the same reason why I had to give up collecting saxophone mouthpieces. Because it's an endless and probably fruitless search for the most part. I ended up with like 3 of these drawers in this desk over here filled with saxophone mouthpieces that I had collected, purchased over the years, and maybe used a couple of times and decided, thought I would dig this, but I don't. And it just goes into that drawer and that's where it lives. Never to see the light of day again unless somebody says, hey, if you've got a spare mouthpiece, and I go, yeah, I've got 3 drawers, help yourself. But yes, and I suppose it's a habit I picked up from my dad as well, who is a sax player, and he has more mouthpieces than I will ever dream of ever wanting to have. However, when he dies, I will inherit all of his mouthpieces, all several thousand of them. So for the same reason, I don't agree with collecting thousands of plugins, because at the end of the day, what you end up with is like 50 compressors, 50 EQs, and it's just like, for me, I think that's just going to slow your workflow down, because you go, right, I'm going to get a compressor on this vocal, and you go, which one shall I use? I have 50 of them, and then you have to go, and then you go, I know, I'm going to use this particular plug-in manufacturer's LA2A style compressor. And then you have to go and find it. And if you've got thousands of plugins in the browser in Studio One, then you're going to be going through that you could be going through that for several minutes until you find it, and then you drag it in. And it's just like, I only have the plugins that I like. And I like the sound of. Does that mean I don't search? Yeah, I do. I demo plugins, but as soon as the demo is done, if I'm not willing to buy the plugin, I get rid of the demo. I delete it. I uninstall it. I remove it from my computer. And that's what I do. So, yeah. It can be an endless search for what we are looking for. Tim says also thanks for the mod spot. You're welcome, buddy. You've earned it. Audio is always a choice. If you put something up front, something will be behind. Always. Yeah, you're quite right, Marcos. To some degree, that is certainly true. And there are many ways in which you can achieve that. You can do that with use of reverb. You can do that with attack and release on a compressor. There are lots of different ways in which you can achieve that kind of three-dimensional aspect of your mix, which is what we're all trying to do, really. It's not just left, right, and center. There's also front and back that we need to take into consideration, and where we place things, not just in the stereo field, but in that kind of front to back field as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's see. Stephen Carpenter says, try the MJUC for lovely glue. It's very me style. Yes, it is. And yeah, if you're wanting just to glue your mix together, it definitely sounds very, very good. DJ Vivaldi says, compression is an inexhaustible topic and long to talk about it. Yeah, it most certainly is. Lots of people have made lots of tutorial videos on compression, and I am among them. In fact, if you go over to my website, there is a big red button there. If you click that big red button, when you tap in your email address, you will get sent my brand new, well, newish, it's like only a few months old, compression series. I had a compression series on my YouTube channel. It was a little bit old, and it was done in an older version of Studio One, and I decided to update it and make it available for free. So if you want my take on compression, go hit that red button. And all you have to do is just tap in your email address, and you'll get sent pretty darn quickly, depending upon how fast the server is today. You'll get sent my compression series, and it's well worth having. I think it's the best compression series I've done, and I've done 2 of them now. So, and yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, and at least it gives you my take on compression and what I think about it and how I apply it and how I like to think about compression. So, yeah, agreed. They'll work in Studio One 5 Artist Pro. Yep, they will. And Tim is also correct again. As long as you have the Rewire third-party add-on for version 4 or below, you can use them. Yep, absolutely right. I don't think the Clang Helm plugins are supported in Studio One 2, but they certainly are in 3 and 4 and 5. And as you correctly point out, Studio One 5 Artist now has the VST native to it. So you can have third-party plugins in Studio One Artist in version 5 now, where you couldn't in version 4. That's something that was actually a pretty big feature request, and we did it for you. So if you are on Studio One 5 Artist, you can get hold of the Clang Helm plugins right now. Let's see what else there is. Oh wow, we've definitely got some new people here tonight, which is great. Cleon Richardson is here as well. And he's from Trinidad. Awesome. Welcome. Bob Studio says you can clip the DAW, but where clipping comes from is at the DA converter DAWs are now designed better these days. Yeah, that's definitely true. Let's see. Marcus says, so if the sound the plugin gives for you, it's analog modeled, very near analog sound, so clipping parallel compression is acceptable in your concern. If the compressor is analog modeled and has a drive function in it, like the MJUC has, then yeah, you can crank it. You can crank it and you can get some nice saturation from it, for sure. But digital clipping is definitely something to be avoided. No doubt about it. At least you don't collect guitars. I don't. My dad does. I have 2 dads. I'm very lucky. I have one who's a tenor sax player. He collects tenor saxes, alto saxes, soprano saxes, and mouthpieces. My other dad collects acoustic guitars and lutes and mandolins and things like that. He's a stringed instrument expert. Let's see. Cleon says, we don't need so many plugins. What we need is to be able to hear properly. Proper treatment of the room or other solutions, and you'll find yourself using fewer plugins. I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with get it right. I mean, my good friend and Persona's work colleague, Joe Gilder, says this a lot. Get it right at the source. And he's often talking about recording. But from a hold on a sec. From a mixing point of view, I would say getting the room right is where you start. Getting your room acoustically as flat and as transparent as you can get it. Now, given most of us are in a home studio and we're in a room like this one, not designed to be a studio, not really given a whole lot of thought when they designed this room to its acoustic properties. So you have to kind of compensate for that. And one of the ways you can do that is with acoustic panels. Now, the acoustic panel set I have here is, well, it's not really a whole lot. I don't actually have a whole ton of treatment in this room. This room is not perfect. There are definitely some issues that I cannot get past. So I have to learn to work around those issues. Now, here's the thing. Once you've got the room treated, the next most important thing is where you position your speakers in the room. Ideally, if at all possible, your speakers want to be firing down the long wall of your room and in the center of the short wall. So you can measure it so that you make sure that your left and right speakers are exactly the same distance from the left and right walls. That's the first thing you'll need to do. The second thing you'll need to do is make sure that your entire setup is in the center of that short wall and preferably backed off a little bit from it as much as you can. There is kind of this theory of, measuring your room in thirds and then having your gear set up in that kind of first third of your room. And then, see, the important thing is you need to allow, as much as you can, space for the low frequencies to develop and kind of expend their energy. So, in an ideal world, something like an open E string on a bass guitar, something like 40 hertz, right, is round about 16 feet long. The wavelength is around about 16 feet long. So ideally, if your speaker throws back to the back wall about 16 feet, by the time it gets that far, that low 40 hertz cycle, 40 cycles per second wave will have run out of gas. It'll have run out of energy. And so it won't reflect off the wall and come back. Not everybody has that luxury. So, putting bass traps in the corners to deal with that low end build-up in the corners and behind you as well is really, really important, because you want to minimize those reflections coming back and off the sides of the walls back into your listening position, so you don't get phase cancellation and comb filtering and standing waves and all of that stuff. So yeah, getting the room right is important, and getting your speakers properly calibrated and in the right location is probably the second most important thing. And as you rightly point out, you're going to use less plugins because your ears and your mind is going to be less confused. So good point. Let's see. What else do we have? Wow, we're nearly out of time here. So I'm going to say this right now. If I haven't got to your question by the end of the show tonight, please do email me. My website address is at the bottom there, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. If you just put Jonny at in front of that, JONNY at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and then just put as the subject Sunday Night Live, And if you've got a question that I didn't get to tonight or through the course of the week, a question crops up in your mind and you would like me to deal with it, then yeah, email that to me. And just like Tony did, Tony messaged me on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and you and I are friends on Facebook, then yeah, drop me a message. And people that email me or send me a message on Facebook, I will deal with your questions first. Okay? That's how it's going to work. So yeah, I apologize if I don't get to everyone's questions. There's quite a few people here. Tim says, if you know what plugin you're using for, Studio One makes it easy by typing in the search bar. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, you know, if you're faced with a lot of different choices, then, yeah, it's still not so easy. But, yeah, your point is taken. Open Air is definitely a great, is a great reverb plugin. And, you know, you can go out and get impulse responses from different rooms and load them up into Open Air and have a whole bunch of beautiful reverbs if you really want them. But yeah, absolutely, Simon, you're spot on, and welcome to my show, because I think you're new. So, hello. Cleon says, fortunate enough to be a beta tester for different companies, so I get plugins for free sometimes. You lucky person. You're very lucky. And Tim is as well. You guys are very lucky. I beta test for Personas for Studio One and Notion, and that's about it. But that's just part of my job. Let's see, what else do we have? Ken is here. He says, hi all, late tonight. I'll have to catch the replay. Hey Ken, good to see you, buddy. Yeah, and if you're watching this, Ken, on the replay and you have a question, just drop me an email, okay? And we can talk. Tim says, acoustics really are a dance with waves. There is no real one-size-fits-all, but there are starting points. Absolutely. And, you know, in home studios in particular, you're always going to have at least one, if not more, issue with your room that you just cannot overcome, that you just cannot get past. It might be the location of a window. Windows are very reflective surfaces. Or it could be, you know, where a mirror is built into the wardrobe, like in this room at the back there in that corner. There's a mirror in the corner, and I can't get past that. That's just a part of the room, so I have to work around it. And I have to take into account that it's there, and it's going to be reflecting audio back into my room. So yes, absolutely. Blades Music is here. I never end up in for the live stream while it's actually live, so this time I barely did. Hello all. Hello to you. Welcome. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you're here. That's very cool. And I hope that, you know, maybe on the next time you're able to make it. And Tim says, clank. Yeah, absolutely. I smacked my head into the mic. And I'm just glad I had my headphones on my ears and that my ear did not smack the mic, because that would be very sore. Old School Funk and Soul is here as well. Hello, mate. I'm glad you're here too. We have 4 minutes left. I don't mind overrunning a little bit. So if you guys have got some more questions, get them in the chat just now, and we can talk about those things too. Absolutely. I'll be glad to do that. I have to make sure I don't talk too loudly because my kids are upstairs sound asleep. It is coming up on 1 a.m. here in Edinburgh in Scotland. United Kingdom, capital of the world, capital of the universe, etc., etc., as I always talk about. So, yeah, so I hope that you guys have found all of this helpful and useful, and it has been a fun look at sidechaining and compression and different compressors. I love talking about that kind of stuff. Marco says, possible to use Prime version with VST or impossible? It is not possible. The VST is only available for artist or professional for Studio One 5. Not available in Prime, and partially available in the demo of the Pro version. So I hope that answers that question for you. But yeah, I hope that answers that for you. But those drum loops, the Tom Breckland drum loops that I was talking about earlier, these are fantastic. And as I say, if you are a member of Presonisphere, you can just get them from the product section of Presonisphere. From inside your account. They are there. Just go download them, and just make sure that when you're downloading any of the add-ons from Presonisphere, make sure that your Studio One is activated with Presonisphere. If you're not sure, then what you can do is you can go up here to Studio One activation, and then you should get this little button here saying activate with Presonisphere. You make sure that that is checked, and then you click activate, and Studio One will be activated with Presonisphere. And if you think you've already done that, there is a way to check that. You can just go to help about Studio One, and it'll tell you Presonisphere has been activated on this computer. Next license update in 4 days. Yes, we extended this. This is something I meant to talk about, by the way, and I think I meant to talk about this last week, and I forgot. But we have extended that period between when Presonisphere needs to call home to the server. It was like 2 days. A lot of people didn't like the fact that it was 2 days. So we extended it, and now it's like 6. And, you know, that's kind of plenty enough. And so if you are connected to the internet, you can just hit this Update Now button, and that will go back up to 6 days. So, you know, you're all good. So if I just click this right now, it'll say update subscription. And there you go. See, it says update in 6 days. Yay. So we're all good. But you need to have Studio One activated with Presonisphere in order for you to activate any of the new add-ons that you get from Presonisphere. Otherwise, you'll get a warning box come up that says product not owned by customer. And so the way to avoid that is by making sure that you are activated with Presonisphere. So there you go. That's what you need to do. Bing! Let's make that go away. So I hope that that was helpful for you. So let's see what else we got here. Simon says, thanks for the good show and have a good time and stay healthy. Thank you very much, mate. I'm glad you're here. Blade says, not a question, but comment that I really like Studio One. Went back to Cakewalk for one song recently to see how it progressed since I left, and it only stressed how cool Studio One is. Very glad to hear that, and very glad that you are enjoying Studio One. I switched from Cubase to Studio One in 2013. I had been using Cubase for nearly 30 years, non-stop, pretty much since the very first version of Cubase was launched. And actually, even before Cubase 1, I used another product made by Steinberg, which is called Pro 24, which was not really a DAW because it didn't have the audio part of it, but it was a sequencer, and it had a lot of the bare bones of what would become Cubase as it went down the line. And I used that for a couple of years until Cubase came out, and then Cubase VST came out, and Cubase 1.2 came out, and then so on all the way down the line. I used Cubase SX1, SX2, SX3, and then all the other iterations of Cubase all the way up to, I think, 6.5 I got to before I jumped ship finally to Presonus and to Studio One. Because I just got fed up to the back teeth of the instability and the bloatedness of Cubase. Because what a lot of people don't know about Cubase is that, you know, the new version of Cubase, which is what, 10.5, is actually it's like archaeology. You know, that's kind of the new thing, but you can go back through the code base, and it's like stratigraphy. You can see code going all the way back to 1987 or 88 when version 1 came out. And it's just like they just slap a new layer of code on top of the old one. And it's no wonder it's kind of a little bit overweight and a little bit unstable, I should say. But yeah, Studio One is not like that at all. And that's what makes it so, for me, so amazing. Marcos says Cakewalk is good, but Studio One is lighter and better than CPU, so Studio One wins. Yeah, absolutely. Old School says, did you see their recent Joe Gilder on plugins? Have you mentioned it? Yeah, I saw Joe's videos. I see a lot of Joe's videos. He and I are very good friends. We go back quite a few years, actually. And so, you know, and we now both work for Personas, so we talk quite a lot, which is great. What else do we have here? Tony says, "Oh, thank you for this show and love Studio One over all the others I have had since 1992." Yeah, 1992. I had left high school, but I had been working in Cubase since 1988, which is when it first came to my school. We had a music teacher at my school who was awesome. He was fantastic. His name was Bob Peters. He was a great musician, but he was also passionate about recording and capturing music well and making good records. He had a home studio. He and I hit it off pretty much immediately on his first day at my school. And, he got me into recording. I had kind of experimented with it. My dad had a couple of reel-to-reel tape machines that I recorded on, and I used to record myself playing drums. I used to record, my piano practice, stuff like that. And we did that on a couple of reel-to-reel tape machines. And then I met Bob Peters when he came to my school on his first day, and he brought all of this recording gear. He brought like an Allen and Heath mixing console. He brought an Atari ST computer, going way back, with Cubase and Pro 24 on it, and I was hooked immediately. And I was just like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to record, I want to mix, I want to make great music using computers. Computers are the future. No more splicing tape. That's as far as I could see it. And so that was my start. And, I plotted my life to go to university, go and learn audio, which is what I did at university. I did audio and jazz composition. So I learned all about harmony, melody, and everything else, and arranging and stuff in my jazz classes. And then I went to the studio and was taught audio by some pretty darn good audio engineers. And then I worked as a session musician for 12 years in London, and started my own studio. And so I've been mixing since the 1990s, and as I say, use Cubase for most of it. Let's see. Loyan says, never try Cubase. Well, be glad. Blades Music says, if you ever want some drums, let me know. Got the E-drum thing going on over here with the Pearl Mimic Pro. Been playing for 30 years. Awesome. Yeah, I've been playing since I was about 2 years old. And then playing professionally since I was about 13, 14, something like that. Yeah, so I've been playing probably for similar kind of time frame as you, really. But yeah, there's nowhere for me to have my drums here. So my drums are in the sanctuary of our church, which obviously I can't get to with COVID-19. So practice pads for me. So yeah, I play my practice pads every single day, have done since I was like 2-3 years old. It's just a habit now. I have to do it. It's something I have to do. I have to play. And I feel weird if I haven't been anywhere near my practice pads. So there you go. And I think we'll end the show right there, folks, because we are 8 minutes over time. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate you new folks as well. So I'm talking to you, Simon, and I'm talking to you, Marcos, and who else am I talking to? DJ Vivaldi, I'm talking to as well, and Cleon. And I apologize if I've missed anybody else out. But yeah, thank you very much, you new folk, for coming, and I hope that you'll come back next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time, back here. I'll smack my hand into the mic again. And the next time you'll see me online on YouTube will be over on the Home Studio Trainer YouTube channel for Songwriting Simplified with my good buddy Jonny Gibe. So I'll see you then. If not, I'll see you in Facebook. And if you put in support tickets, at Personas, I may well be the one responding to you. So until then, folks, good night. Good night, everybody. Let's make it a round number, shall we, Tim? There you go. Good night.